had resurrected, if you will, historic technocracy. I think maybe a better word would be hijack. These elite groups typically don't have any original ideas of their own, but they're masters at hijacking other people's ideas. That's just been my experience over the years.
Sounds familiar.
And so, yeah, so I don't expect that they invented this in any way, shape, or form. In fact, back in the 1930s, this movement called technocracy did not have any institutionalized money behind it at all. The Carnegies were not there. The Rockefellers were not anywhere in sight. They did have some institutional support with Columbia University, but there was no big money for them back then. So the global elite were not backing technocracy in the 1930s. But in the early 1970s, they picked it up and they began to move it forward. And what really struck me, John, in the end of this was because we had studied this phrase, new international economic order, until our hair almost fell out. And we never could quite put a finger on what they meant. You know, is this just like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic or what? You know, is it Keynesianism? Is it something else? You know, what are they doing with this new international economic order? Technocracy put the light bulb on for me.
Yeah.
That was the new economic order that they were talking about in 1973 when they were first started. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. So that's kind of a little bit of my background, how I got to where I am. I published a book, by the way, on my work for Technocracy, as you know. It's called Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. And that really does have a summary, a very good summary, documented summary as well, of the research that I've done in recent times and connecting it to the Trilateral Commission. So this has led me, in any case, to say, you know, my little tagline to the subject is that the dark horse of the New World Order is not communism, socialism, or fascism. It is technocracy. And I will justify that statement as we go along. But the first question that comes up is, what is being transformed? Transformed is a word you hear all the time now in the media. You hear it at the United Nations. You hear it in these elitist groups that are meeting. The word transformed, and it does have a special meaning to them. You'll appreciate that, I think, as we go along. But we need to understand the word as well. What's being transformed, because it's us, basically. It pertains to us. And so we see that economics are being transformed. Government is being transformed. Religion is being transformed. The law in the legal system and the rule of law, what's left of it, is being transformed as well. We have energy, things like smart grid and so on. Energy is being reformed today. All the talk about energy and green energy and stuff is all related to technocracy. And I dare say that even humanity itself is being transformed in some very unusual ways. And even beyond that, Christianity also is being transformed. And so, you know, okay, if all this transformation is going on, the next question comes up. Who is doing the transformation? What are the elements of this? Well, element number one, I will lay at the feet of the Trilateral Commission. You'll see as we go through this how important this group has been and is today in the transformation of all these areas of society. Secondly, technocracy is doing the transformation because we see technocracy at the root of all of these programs. And I'll explain this as we go along. Then we have the United Nations. We can't leave them out because they have been the publisher of the ideas, if you will, to the contagion, to take it to every corner of the world. And then we have a number of non-governmental organizations who are major players in this whole scenario. So the transformation is taking place right under our noses, and the kinds of programs, the types of programs that we need to look at in order to see the transforming crucible are things like Agenda 21 that was originally created at the 1992 Rio Conference, the Earth Summit, in Rio de Janeiro. That produced a doctrine of sustainable development, which we see everywhere in the world today. Then we see programs like smart grid, the reformation of energy, the collection of energy with these smart meters on the side of your homes and your businesses. Then you have the whole area of climate change. That's a huge, huge pillar in technocracy. Well, we'll explain climate change as we go along, but it's in the news all the time, you know.
Oh, yes.
Then we have cap and trade. That's another thing that people don't understand very well, but it's also been in the news. We can thank probably somebody like Mr. Al Gore for creating and popularizing cap and trade. Al Gore, by the way, I'll mention right now, is a member of the Trilateral Commission.
I'm shocked.
Smart growth is another thing that that has to do with what cities are doing these days with the stack and pack type housing projects where the apartments are on top of the retail stores, where zoning laws are changing radically, where they take away rights from property owners left and right. Programs like the green economy, we'll look at that. The green economy is described by the United Nations very succinctly. It'll blow your mind. And then we have the whole area of human enhancement, which covers topics like transhumanism. And I really don't necessarily intend to talk about transhumanism this session, but it's a huge topic. It deserves its own space.
No, I agree with you completely. You know, it got my. I don't mean to break a train here, but I wonder if that was some sort of a secret message that incoming president, obviously he was incoming at the time, Obama, when he said we're just 120 some odd days away from fundamentally transforming America. Was this another case, in your opinion, of them telling us what they're going to do?
Absolutely.
Disguised as some sort of a little cutesy thing, but actually it was quite serious, far more serious than we thought.
Absolutely. I'm personally convinced anywhere you hear the word transform today in politics or in major economic circles, look out. That's when you want to reach for your wallet. Hold on tight. Because you're about to be fleeced.
Connect your lanyard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I know the bikers have it right with the chain lanyards fastened to their wallet.
You read my mind. The big chain.
I know. Let's hope they don't become handcuffs.
Oh, that's good.
So starting with the history of technocracy is important, and I put the base out of a topic of philosophy called scientism. And scientism is literally the worship of science. We'll see how this works a little bit later, but the father of technocracy, undisputed, was a French philosopher that lived between 1760 and 1825. His name is Henri de Saint-Simon. And he wrote the following back then. Okay, this was in somewhere around 1820. He wrote, and I quote, "A scientist, my dear friends, is a man who foresees. It is because science provides the means to predict that it is useful, and scientists are superior to all other men." Well, let's look at that just for a second. I take exception with the fact that, or the suggestion that scientists are superior to all other men. Yes. Last time I looked, we all put our pants on the same way. So I reject that. But I also reject the fact that a scientist, much less any group of scientists, are able to foresee or to predict the future. This is ridiculous. Nobody has ever been able to predict the future, not with great accuracy in any case. Certainly we can read trends and we can extrapolate trends, but that is not the same as predicting the future. So this whole business of technocracy got off on the wrong foot, in my estimation, way back in those days, where scientists were elevated to a position of priesthood.
Yeah, talk about Dr. Feelgood.
That's right. And
Seriously,
so
a serious infusion of hubris.
yes, so you have the oracle of science, if you will. And then you have the scientists who are the only ones allowed to approach the oracle of science to get today's reading, or today's whatever doctrine, right?
Yes.
And then the scientists come down from the mountain and they tell the rest of us uh, less than superior men
Of course.
what science said and what we have to do about it.
What
Okay?
science said.
That's right. So you hear this in the news today. I just read several articles, headlines yesterday. I was on a leading business website. There was at least 3 or 4 headlines that had been scratched. That means when you create a headline, in newspaper terms, you call it scratching a headline. There were several headlines that somebody had made that started out literally with the phrase "science says," and then it filled in the blanks.
Yes.
And it just struck me thinking about this. Science says. Who says science? How can science speak?
Who's this guy, Science? Who is he?
Yeah, who is this guy, Science? And where does he live? I want to go visit him. It's ridiculous. Science does not speak, yet people are looking at science as if it's somehow intelligent life. And the priesthood, the scientists and engineers, are the only ones allowed to approach science to understand what science is saying to the rest of humanity. And so if it's climate change, for instance, and nobody understands climate change, but the scientists, and Al Gore too, he does, of course, he says
Absolutely.
he does. But, they take the topic of, well, climate change says you need to do, science, it says you need to dump your wood-burning stove. You need to get rid of that stove. It's selfish to burn lumber and pollute the, pollute wood and stuff and pollute the atmosphere with your wood stove. And so the EPA just the other day is announced it's going to initiate some new rules that will limit, if not outlaw, many types of wood stoves in America. This is insanity. But it's all based on the idea that, well, climate change science says this is what we need to do. And so they come down and they proclaim their little, priestly message to us and expect us to follow it with some kind of blind faith. Like, well, oh gosh, you're smarter than me, man. You must know. So I guess I better do that. I'll throw my scrap iron wood stove out the back door and I'll get myself a new solar heater or something.
Yes.
I guess it only works at night or in the daytime when the sun's out, when I don't need to be heated. But that's another issue. So anyway, scientism is at the base of technocracy. It's at the base of transhumanism as well. This is the common thread between both of them. And this is the underlying philosophy that we see throughout. So let me tell you, just give you some highlights again on what scientism is or isn't. It's the application of the scientific method to social and political modeling. This is what they've done. Science met sociology back in the 1930s. It was a bad meeting, by the way. Number 2, science is the absolute and only access to truth and reality about man and the universe. They really believe that. If truth has not been discovered through science and the scientific method, it does not exist. They actually believe this. Number 3, is specifically opposed to the Bible as truth. It completely rejects that thought. It believes there is no God because it's heavily embedded in Darwin's, Darwinian theory. So it's essentially atheistic. At the best, you could call it humanistic, but it is definitely excludes God. And it's predictive. This is what they believe. I'm not saying it, but it's predictive and able to foretell the future. And it rejects any inquiry that does not agree. This is another specific thing that's important to realize. If you disagree with these people, like Al Gore just came out yesterday with an article. I clipped it and I put it up several places. He said, the climate deniers, that would be me, I'm not